And welcome back to Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Scalina.
And I'm your other host, Matt Scalina.
And Matt, today we've got a phenomenal episode. We have Kevin Desmond, CEO from Translink.
This was a major get for the show. Phenomenal conversation. We actually caught him leaving the UDI breakfast series.
We did.
The Urban Development Institute, where Kevin was the guest speaker talking about transportation policy now and in the future, obviously, over the next 10 years. Super exciting conversation with Kevin.
Yeah, for sure. And we were setting up the equipment because we filmed this, so it's going to be available on YouTube as well.
Right.
But we were setting up the equipment, and we didn't get a chance to actually see his keynote, I guess.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, he covered most of it right here, and we're bringing it to you live.
Not live.
Sorry, recorded. On a podcast and on YouTube. So we're super excited about that. And another thing that I'm excited about as an investor, as somebody watching the real estate market in Vancouver, Kevin talks about the station along the Broadway line that he's most excited about. And a lot of you are probably thinking commercial platform. It's not commercial platform.
It's not commercial platform.
Stay tuned, though. No spoilers.
Right
Matt.
by the Independent at Main?
It's not there either. But no spoilers.
Okay. But yeah, one thing we should kind of point out, because Kevin is talking about transportation policy.
Right.
This is really useful, not to put too fine a point on it, from an investment or real estate perspective.
Just even lifestyle. Like, where do you want to be able to connect to the entire city?
Right. Because he's talking about the future in ways that are very interesting and give you really good insight into what Vancouver's going to look like.
Oh, it's
5,
phenomenal.
10, 15 years from now for sure. So stay tuned for that.
He's a real visionary. It's funny. Like when you hear him talk, he's really ahead of the curve. And one of the areas, I mean, where you just came from, Vegas, seems to be like they're ahead of the curve when it comes to bottle service, but how are they when it comes to transportation?
So we're filming this right after the long weekend. I was in Vegas,
right?
And one thing I will say is we were fresh off our talk with Kevin. It's worth pointing out how progressive Vancouver is and how exciting the future is for this region. When you go to Vegas, where there's literally thousands of people, I haven't been there in a very long time, thousands of people walking the strip, and there's also thousands of cars and potentially thousands of fatalities. It is nuts that it's like the Vegas Strip
There's
is
like
literally
8
like
lanes or something,
it's like
right?
a freeway.
Yeah.
It's a freeway, and you think about that in relation to how we're conceptualizing transportation here in Vancouver, and it's just makes you excited to be here. I think we ask him if we're a leader, and in a lot of ways after that trip, I think it's confirmed for me.
Right, and
we're doing all right.
That's a good contrast for this interview. And before we get to that, let's just on a final note, we had our first live streaming event last week. We're learning this stuff as we go.
That's right.
But it was phenomenal. It was live at the Bento Box. Our good friend from RamyFilms.com was helping out, and we just had a good time. It was a hangout.
Anyone who didn't see it, it was on YouTube live streaming. It was Corey Wright from William Wright Commercial. You and I
talking about the emergence in the marketplace of not only dispensaries, but how craft breweries are taking over and leading decisions for community development, and also, of course, for investors and everything else.
Yeah,
a lot to unpack there. We were worried about having enough topic to fill up the conversation for an hour.
No, an hour went by pretty quick, and
it was good. I think
it was a lot of fun.
Question.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And the thing is we got our next event on November 9th.
Right.
So we're going to be doing these live streaming events. I'm excited about it. I think it's a great thing. And the idea of these, and this is, we're all new to YouTube, at least on this show, or at least I am. The idea is we are going to be asking people that are tuning in questions, engaging. It's kind of like a group beer on a Wednesday night.
It's like you get to sit down and hang out with industry insiders, which is what we're doing at this event, and you get to pick their brain, and you can pick their brain. You can actually pick their brain with your own questions, so it's really exciting.
And before we cut to our talk with Kevin, we should say we got Kevin. We got Larry Beasley's book.
Right. We got Larry Beasley's book, Vancouverism. We do have a couple more copies. We're going to be giving away one copy today over at the end of the show. And so stay tuned for that. And if you do want to subscribe for our YouTube, you should head over, click subscribe. Also, click that bell. I think that bell does something. We're not entirely sure what, but I think it alerts you to new videos and potentially to live events.
I didn't even see the bell, but yeah, click the bell. Also, if you want, like Adam said, we got a couple more Vancouverism books. The draw is from the reviews on Google. Google Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. On the right-hand side, you will see our business profile. You click review, you write a review, you get put in the hat. We got a winner today. We're going to announce it after our talk with Kevin Desmond, CEO of Translink.
Yep. And without further ado, let's cut to our chat with Kevin.
Enjoy.
Okay, so we're here with Kevin Desmond, CEO at Translink. How you doing, Kevin?
Good morning. Just fine.
Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Can you start by maybe telling us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, I don't like talking about myself.
No.
Okay, it's a podcast, so I will. Well, I've been here in the Vancouver region for 3.5 years now. I live in New Westminster, and I can walk to work, which is just lovely after my 12 years commuting between Tacoma and Seattle for my job as the general manager of King County Metro. So the long commute on transit, on buses and trains. I'm glad to be walking these days after a long commute. Originally from New York, I've been in the Pacific Northwest region of this continent since 1996, though. And I've sort of taken up the Seahawks as a fan of that fun football team. But I am a New York Yankees fan, and they swept the Twins last night, so I'm super happy. So that gives you a little bit of different pieces of me.
Right. So I saw that you're from New York. You've worked in the Pacific Northwest for a while. Can you tell us why you went after this job in Vancouver? You're moving to Canada. Was there something about Vancouver that attracted you to this region?
My wife and I were up here in 2015 to see one of our favorite rock bands, a band that likes to come to Vancouver a lot, and they're from Ireland. And my wife said, God, I love Vancouver. Wish we could live in Vancouver. And then a few months later, I got a phone call recruiting me for the job. And the appeal is, having been in the Seattle region for almost 20 years and working in Seattle for those previous 12 years, we would often come up here on business trips and study what was going on in Vancouver. And we were way behind, and they still are, the transit development here in this region down in Seattle. In 1996, they had just passed a vote, major funding to begin building light rail. The light rail project didn't open until 13 years later in 2009. And they're now well on their way to building out light rail. But we would study this region with a great deal of envy and admiration, particularly on the connection of land use planning and transit development. SkyTrain had been built out. So, when I got the call, I'd been the head of King County Metro for 12 years. It was always, you want to look for something, the next big thing. It's just up the road. Didn't have to move far away from my family. My kids, but more importantly, it represented such a cool opportunity to continue the really good progressive things we were doing in the Puget Sound. And that is one of the things that connects us with the Seattle region. The folks in Seattle doing lots of good progressive stuff with public transportation, just as we are. We're a little ahead on some things. They might be a little ahead on a few other things. So I was able to come and roll out my playbook, learn more about this region and how to adapt that playbook for this region going forward. And it's just been a great opportunity. And, the timing for me, obviously, was quite good because federal money started emerging right after I got here, which catalyzed and got everybody back to the table for our mayor's plan. And we could start building out the absolutely necessary transit improvements that had been long stalled.
Right. Just two follow-ups there. One, was it U2?
Might have been.
And two, it sounds like Vancouver, you see Vancouver as a leader, at least in the Pacific Northwest, in terms of transit. Is that kind of from a larger perspective? Do people look at Vancouver's public transit as a leader?
Well, if I can brag, we were named the outstanding public transit system in North America by the American Public Transit Association, our industry association that covers the years 2016 through 18. So yeah, I think we are admired. A couple weeks ago, we had a major conference called Revolution in town. Revolution was kind of created by these activists in Portland, which was kind of the launch point, at least in the United States, for the reemergence of different transit modes, particularly light rail. And Revolution is about the intersection of smart land use planning and livability with mobility planning and transit. So we were proud to host it for the first time in Canada, first time outside of the United States, and for their 25th anniversary. And about 1,300 people came to the conference, and by all accounts, they thought it was great. Everyone that comes, that I meet with at least, that comes from out of town to study the things that we're doing are gobsmacked at the things that go on here, particularly when they come in the summer when the weather's nice. But they see the types of things that we're doing, particularly from that land use and transit planning perspective. The density around the SkyTrain network is unparalleled. It doesn't happen anywhere. I mean, you can forget New York City and Chicago and Toronto, the older northeastern cities. For the sort of newer cities, nothing compares to the way that, from a land use planning perspective, the municipal planning perspective, and the transit planning perspective, you get these outcomes. And because of that, we have an incredibly cost-effective system. So back to your question, why I was interested in the job, I also knew that our services here at Translink are very, very effective. For example, I had 1,400 buses at King County Metro. I have about 1,400 buses here, about 1,500 buses now. We carry twice the number of people on our buses here as I did in King County for the same number of people. That's because of really good transit planning, the connections between bus and rail, and the densities around our corridors. It just creates this wonderful outcome. When people come from outside of the region, they see what we're doing here, they said, this is the best. So yeah, we're really proud of that in a lot of ways. And, we welcome people coming in to study. That said, we're always have our eyes wide open to steal great ideas from other people.
Right. You just finished your talk with UDI. Can you talk a little bit about Translink's relationship with the development community?
I think it's good. I think it can be very good, and I think it needs to be very good, particularly as we get into the next decade and the next decades of building out our mobility services in this region. The most important partners, I think, in a lot of ways, that the public sector that's managing the transportation policy and the transportation outcomes, the most important partnership needs to be with land developers in a lot of different ways. When I'm learning as I meet with the developers, they have a very interesting, much longer term perspective than a lot of businesses. They can think about developing their big parcels over 10, 20, 30 plus year period. They can think long term. A lot of their projects can take that long to fully build out. So they have an interesting long-term perspective. When I've met with the most progressive of these companies, they really, really bring a great attitude about, we understand we have to lay out our design very smartly. We need to understand what you need, so that in the future, if and when public transit might come to our community, it's already laid out to be extremely supportive of that. Increasingly, though, we have this deficit of public funding to meet all of the needs. We have this incredible ridership boom, 18% ridership growth, 2016 through 18 continues to grow this year. Even as we put out more service, more people are using it. In fact, more people, the ridership growth is outpacing the service increase. We have to find smart partnerships, and who better to do smart partnerships with the private sector, and the development community is a big part of that. And it's very important that in the intersection of municipal planning, regional land use planning, mobility planning, and then how developers see how they can make profitable projects that also meet the public good, that's where we can, that's the sweet spot for us to engage with them.
So ridership's up almost 20%. What do you attribute that to? Like, that seems striking in the last 2-3 years.
Well, it leads North America by a long shot. In fact, the phenomenon over the last several years in most of North America is stagnant or in fact declining transit ridership. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Ride-hailing, or TNCs, as it were, in many cities probably have something to do with that, but each city's got a different set of challenges. So our ridership growth is without parallel. Nobody has even come close to that. Seattle is fairly close to that, but still we've outpaced that. There's a lot of different reasons for that. We have high gas prices here. Like other cities, though, we've got population and job growth. There's nothing overly exceptional in this part of the decade of our population and job growth compared to other cities in North America. We've been adding service, though. And I said on stage a little while ago at UDI, it started with Evergreen Line opening up. That was big. And then we immediately started adding service in 2017, and we haven't stopped adding service. There was clearly a lot of latent demand. My coming in and improving the attitude towards customer service, I think, helped some of that. If we were not able to continue to add service in 2017, 2018, and 2019, that ridership growth would have stopped. So clearly, my phrase, we feed the beast. So that our ability to add service to the buses, to create new service territories where we didn't have service before, to improve SkyTrain service, to improve C-Bus service, et cetera, that creates this virtuous cycle. Okay, latent demand adds service, attracts more people. Put more service out, attracts more people. One of my favorite examples of that is our Route 555 from the Carvolth Exchange on Highway 1 to the Coquitlam Station. That service isn't very old, and it's anchored by a park and ride at Carvolth. Great success at the start. We added service. More people came. More people come, we add more service. More people came, we add more service. And then early next year, we're going to put double deckers on that route and double the capacity of the bus and make it fun. These are examples how we just need to keep with the wave going forward. As long as we can keep that spigot open, we will continue to be able to absorb and drive more ridership because there's an enormous amount of latent demand here. And as we see these towers going up around SkyTrain, that's just more people that are going to be demanding our services.
Sure. So this idea of feed the beast is kind of an interesting one. In your mind, what are you excited about, or what does public transportation look like 10 to 15 years from now in Metro Vancouver?
Well, I have no better crystal ball than anyone else. There is no doubt. I started my career in the public transit industry at New York City Transit in the 1990s. I've often quipped a little bit cynically and a little bit sarcastically that much of our industry is still stuck in the 1950s. That's just a bit of a sarcastic quip about elements of the things that we do. We are in by far the most exciting time in our industry, certainly in my career, and I think for the last century. It's just amazing, the changes that are happening today and next decade, in so many different ways in cities throughout North America and the world will be transformed. What's really cool about this part of the world, we're a very progressive part of the world. In my view, we have a progressive transit agency with progressive policy leaders, reasonably well funded. We can be part of that change as opposed to having the change happen to us. And that's what I aim to do. And we have a really good team at Translink that's thinking about these new mobility services, thinking of interesting ways to partner, thinking about ways, if our fundamental objective at Translink is improving mobility for people, as opposed to fundamental objective, getting more people to take my buses. If you start with how do you improve mobility for people and do it sustainably, then you're riding that disruption curve, as you will. What it will look like 10 years from now, I don't know. I don't know the pace of automation, how the pace of automation for trucks, for personal autos, for eventually even our buses. I don't know how that might play out, but it's going to be super fascinating to see how it does play out. How the different types of micromobility services, whether it's Uber and Lyft, dockless scooters, conventional bike share, the plethora of car share companies that we have in our region, it's an all-in environment, and it's going to be really cool. And the other thing that we believe very strongly is in getting our buses to zero emission. And we just launched our first 4 fast charge electric battery buses a couple weeks ago. It's the beginning of an era. And if things work out in our favor, there's no reason starting next decade that we should be buying anything but zero emission buses. So there's huge amount of change coming. going forward. We're doing our long-range plan right now. We did our largest ever public engagement this summer so that we can get everybody in this region leaning in and telling us what they think we should be doing over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So I don't have any better crystal ball really than anyone else. I want to know what the public thinks is important for the 2020s and the 2030s.
And we always talk a lot about affordability, and obviously climate change is a huge topic right now and should be. Can you talk a little bit about the stakes that you see in terms of being very aggressive with public transportation policy?
Well, the stakes are really high. In our long-range planning, we are estimating, all the people that crunch these numbers, that over the next 30 years, we're going to add well over 1 million people to this region. This region has about 2.5 million people now, so do the math. That's a 50% increase in population.
Right.
Where are we going to put all of those people? In an extremely, extremely constrained physical environment. There's like, you can't grow our metro region. This region, one of the hallmarks of this region is that it has very, very strong land use policies to make sure we're keeping a lot of open space, the agricultural land reserve and so forth, and we have water and mountains. There's not a lot of place to grow. So the stakes are enormous to figure out how to design and fund and then implement really, really smart, sustainable mobility solutions going forward. And then back to land use, it has to be directly linked to smart land use planning. And then it goes back to the development community. That's that symbiotic intersection.
Right.
That then, the land use folks, the development community that's got all the private capital, to make smart land uses happen. And then if we work with them proactively, then we can make the mobility work for those new developments super, super well. And then we can absorb these 1.2 million additional people. They're going to be driving electric zero-emission cars. They're going to be getting around probably in automated vehicles, and hopefully we're going to have a fully electrified zero-emission fleet so that we continue to clean the air up. We provide options where people don't feel like they have to get in a car and drive by themselves to get from point A to point B. The stakes are huge. If everyone still has to drive their own car to get around, I don't know where all those people are going to fit, because this region does not have the capacity or the land to build out a bunch of new highways.
Mm-hmm. So one of the upcoming projects that we've been talking about a lot is the Broadway Line. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about why you're excited about the Broadway Line and some of the stations you might be excited about?
Well, 6-kilometer extension from VCC Clark to Arbutus, and it's going to be a game changer for that corridor. Long in the making. It won't open until the end of 2025, so we have a ways to go. And some construction disruption along the way. But that corridor, I had a stat, I think something like 40% or I forget the number, a huge portion of our overall bus ridership happens along that corridor with east-west connections and north-south connections. The city has big ideas for how to make sure the Broadway corridor thrives as a really, really strong diverse, livable community, and the Broadway line can have a lot to catalyze that. There's no doubt about it. So the most exciting part of it will be to see, 10 or 15 years out, how that corridor develops. And I hope, and I know that the city is so focused on this, that it'll develop in a really, really great way, in a very, very sustainable way. And increasingly, nowadays, certainly, you guys obviously know this, in a way that provides the diversity of housing and opportunities that will make that transit investment really work from a sort of social outcome as well. So it's going to be a great project.
And what are your hopes for working?
You asked, by the way, I to interrupt you, asked about my favorite station. My favorite station is the City Hall, City Center station, because we will finally have a seamless connection between the Millennium Line and the Canada Line.
Right.
Okay, that station's going to be very well done and going to be a huge amenity to get people to and from to the airport and to our business centers and to Richmond. The connections at Waterfront Station and at City Center now around Granville, They're not great connections between the existing system and Canada Line. So finally, I think in this case, we can do it right.
And in terms of moving the new line from Arbutus to UBC, what are your hopes for working with the province to get that done?
Well, we have a long way to go. We're in a study process now that will conclude mid next year. We have to identify vertical and horizontal alignment. A lot of work needs to be done on how much of it can be above ground and how much of it either needs to be below ground or is desired to be underground, where the stations are going to be, how they will interact with future land development, whether it's out at UBC or in the Jericho lands. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's no funding for the project other than the study project. It remains one of the high priority projects in the mayor's vision going forward. Very expensive, will cost billions and billions of dollars. So best case outcome that we get our policymakers to continue work on the project in the next phase of our planning to get us to the pre-development work needed to have a business case and get ready for procurement. It can't be done as a continuous project with the Arbutus, the current Broadway project. It still has to get into the queue, though, on what the priorities are going forward. It is going to cost a lot of money. So we've got to do the data as well to make sure that the right projects are lined up at the right time. Mm-hmm. I would hope with the Broadway project that I think can help propel it along, not only at the regional level, but with senior government, the province and the federal government, that we get really good contribution from other players. So we don't necessarily have to go out to taxpayers with a big ask, at least for that portion of the project. So it's a lot of work needs to be done, a lot of public conversation. I know that there's going to be controversy probably across the board along the corridor in terms of what happens to the community, what happens with density and so on and so forth. So it's our obligation to work closely with the city of Vancouver to plan that outcome. So that's a good result for everybody.
There's actually excuse me. There's some really exciting rapid transit studies that we've been kind of thinking about and talking about on the show. Vancouver to the North Shore, Vancouver to Portland. Are there anything? Which regions, I guess, or connections that are going to benefit the Vancouver region are you kind of most excited about that are under study?
Well, so, to me, it starts with I'm big into public opinion and public input. So I think we have to see how, the public input from our long-range planning informs those choices. I don't have a favorite, nor do I want to. I don't want the public to think I have a favorite either. We have to work through a process. I know that every community in the region wants more. Okay, That's why I don't have a favorite. What comes first? UBC, thinking about SkyTrain to the North Shore. Thinking about drone transportation for all I know. I don't know. I don't know. I just know that my sense of what we have to do is with senior government funding commitments, create an environment where we have guarantees of capital support from the federal government and the province so that we can have a continuous program of development and building over the next several decades. We have to do that. And that way, the various different projects will line up logically. So which project is next? What are the factors that puts a project to the head of the line? UBC, North Shore, SkyTrain to Port Coquitlam, improving, commuter rail. I think how we can leverage and capitalize on the very extensive existing freight rail network here. If you think about it from a 30-year perspective, how do you do that? How do we find better connections to the Fraser Valley and the sea to sky, corridor as well? Squamish, increasingly a bedroom community for jobs here in the Metro Vancouver region. We have to be thinking about that as well. All of those priorities have to line up logically, and then we have to figure out how to kind of slot them in. Mm-hmm. If we do it one-off and very sporadically, it'll be harder, it'll be more politically fraught, and it will take a lot longer.
Just thinking about, you mentioned drones there. I'm not big on technology and kind of the future understanding what's going to happen here. But in terms of multimodal transportation and, Uber, Lyft coming, how do you envision the arrival of ride hailing? Are there challenges? Are there opportunities and other kind of technological changes? How are you guys kind of approaching that?
Well, as I said earlier, this is a super exciting time to be in our business. And, the emergence of the so-called TNCs, transportation network companies, ride hailing, Uber, Lyft, and so forth, represents both a challenge and an opportunity. I mean, the challenge, one of the benefits of this region, so I don't want to get into the politics of this, but one of the benefits of this region being the last to get ride hailing in North America is that the region was able to observe what happened with the, I don't want to say early adopters, because I think, Uber happened to cities, given their business model. But we could learn from that. And clearly there are a lot of negatives associated with that, whether, probably the biggest negative that we've seen in a lot of cities is the traffic congestion that has come from that. Then secondarily, the extent to which TNCs have eroded transit demand and transit ridership is concerning. So, when we testified to the province a couple of times as they were developing their policy approach, we said we're not opposing ride hailing, we're not fearing ride hailing, because we do think that there are some opportunities to improve mobility for the region, but there need to be certain conditions and certain things we need to be concerned about, particularly the extent to which it could erode traffic. It could increase congestion. If it increases congestion, everybody loses. Mm-hmm. And if it slows our buses down, it makes our buses more expensive, and then people less likely to use our service, which means our fare revenue goes down, and you get into a vicious negative cycle. So these are the kind of challenges that we have to be focused on. What we need to be working with cities on is improving the speed and reliability of our buses, and that's what we're doing with our Rapidbus program. So we can sort of take the challenge of ride hailing and say, oh, woe is us, look what's happening to us. Or we can take the emergence of ride hailing and say, how are we going to improve what we're doing so that we can continue to be competitive with driving alone or taking the ride hailing services. So challenge, opportunity. Any challenge to me creates an opportunity. And I think what it does is will make us sharper as an organization, working with lots of our partners to provide even better public transit service in the future, and then find ways that the shared use mobility services are augmenting and complementing what we do. So a great example of that is late night service. We get asked all the time, how come we can't run SkyTrain late at night for the downtown services? We've been through that. It's it's where we maintain the service. The sweet spot and the biggest demand times that we've seen from Lyft and Uber is Friday and Saturday nights worldwide. So that improves mobility for the people of this region. So I think if it ups the game and creates more and better mobility options, then that's a good thing, while at the same time making sure we're providing excellent public transit and that it doesn't create more traffic congestion. And if 3 or 4 years from now, after the emergence of these services, we can say that was the outcome, then I think the region gets a win. Mm-hmm. And if that's not happening, then I hope we can figure out ways to adjust.
Well, we know you're a busy guy, Kevin. And so I don't know, maybe we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. That was perfect.
All right. So there you have it, folks. Our discussion with Kevin Desmond, CEO of Translink.
Matt, I should say your discussion pretty much, because you were running the show. I'd showing up off of about 30 minutes of sleep. I have a 3-month-old. Not a great sleep the night before, but thanks for carrying.
Well, you know what?
When I look back at that interview, I'll see one set of footprints because you carried me.
That's right.
Because that poem.
Yeah, no, I know what you're referencing.
Footprints.
JC.
Yeah.
But it was a great conversation.
Sure.
I really enjoyed it. I think it gave, at least in my mind, a better understanding of the future of this region and what we're doing transportation-wise. Really exciting stuff. So I'm glad we got Kevin on the show.
And we picked up the term multimodal, which apparently is what the millennials are super excited about.
This is the future.
And I'm actually getting, I want to figure out, because our office is we've got an office downtown and an office in the Canby corridor. But the big thing about it is how I get to work. So I'm probably thinking of walking a portion, maybe taking the share bike program to work, and then that would be like one way.
Yeah.
If I was going downtown, I might hop on the walk to the SkyTrain, take the SkyTrain, then take
To a car share.
to a car share, and then park that and get on a bike and finish the journey. But
Sounds ambitious.
keep in mind, it's really only a 5-minute walk. I'm just exploring my options. But it's a really neat thing, right? I mean, when you think about connecting in the city, you know, it's phenomenal that there's so many different ways to connect.
Hey, the future is here for sure. What else do we got?
What do we have?
Let me think. Oh, Vancouverism. Larry
Vancouver.
Beasley
We have the
signed
draw.
the book. We got the draw. So Secret is not here today. He's off doing other business.
Drum lessons.
But he did give us a winner.
Yes, and a copy of Vancouverism by Larry Beasley.
That's right.
And it is signed with a personal message, and we'll keep that one private because it is to each potential winner.
Oh yeah, that is a good one. That is a good one.
Very good
And the winner today, the only one to read the inspiring message is drumroll Secret. Wait a second, he's not even here. How does this work?
I don't know. We just keep talking, and the winner is
Paul Fang. So Paul Fang wrote, and he entered a couple months back.
Yeah, and the applause we should mention is the live studio audience.
Yeah.
Where we are recording at the Bento Box.
Right. Paul Fang writes, really useful information for the real estate newbie with awesome guests, and love the restaurant recommendation at the end of each interview. Good work, guys.
Oh, well, congratulations, Paul. Thanks for writing a review.
Interesting that Paul won the one time that we didn't get the 5-wire done. Kevin is a very busy guy. We had a very short time frame with him.
Right.
And if we did the 5-wire, I think that was half the interview. So we decided to cut that. No. But thank you very much, Paul. That's fantastic. Get in touch, and we got your copy of Vancouver's in here.
And Matt, quickly, how can people sign up, or how can people actually, get entered into the draw to win Larry Beasley's Vancouver?
It's very simple. You go to Google. You type in Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. On the right-hand side, there's a business profile. Okay. You click review. You review the podcast. You're in. We have a couple books left. I don't know if we're doing this for much longer.
Yeah.
But the fact is, a lot of you have won.
A lot of you have won.
And a lot of you are still going to win.
And there's still under 100 reviews, so you have a really good opportunity. And we'd say maybe 20 or so of those, 20% have already won.
We're probably at 20%.
If you write a review, there's a good chance you're getting a book. So just leave us a review. Matt's instructions were good. You should probably also mention that make sure that the business on the right-hand side is ours.
That's right. Yeah. Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. We also have a website. It's vancouverrealestatepodcast.com. Head over there for many things, including resources like private client services.
Yes, Matt, if you are not using PCS, you are standing still while the rest of us power walk by. You get sold prices, days on market. You basically get realtor-level information at your fingertips. It's free, it's available on our site, and it is the best resource out there. I promise you, we've tried them all. This is the best way to look for real estate in Vancouver.
If you're searching for Vancouver real estate without PCS, you are doing it wrong. We also got the Live Wire.
We do.
That's our weekly email. We're sending out deal of the month there. Also other deals, assignment deals. I mean, there's no reason not to be on the Live Wire. And last, we got our YouTube page. This is our new thing. We got a YouTube page. We really should say, head over there and subscribe. There's no reason not to be subscribed to our YouTube page.
Yeah, you should be clicking that alert button. And we're still faces for radio. We're just trying it out on video.
Yeah. And so far, so much fun. Is that what you say? So far, so much fun.
So far,
can we cut that? Rainy?
No. I think we're gonna stick with that. So
far, so much fun.
So long, so much fun. What else do we have? How do you get in touch with you, Matt?
You can give me a call at any time, 778-847-2854, or Matt at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
Or you can try me at 778-866-4574 or Adam at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
We also got that secret line that's going to go on the reel here. Info at VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com.
So long and so much fun. And we'll see you next week, guys.
Signing off. Take care.